Okay, now we've selected from Quora some frequently asked questions that are in the marketplace via Quora. And of course, you can bring them in from many other sources. And this particular grid, the FAQ to SAQ, frequently asked questions to should ask question transition, is one of the areas that a lot of people get really confused. And we're going to clear that up for you now. And I don't want you to make it more complicated than it actually is, because there is a potential for getting lost in coming up with more and more ways of rephrasing the exact same question. Another thing to consider, let's go back to the spread. We're actually right here on the ISDNA still. Now we're going to move into the frequently asked questions. This column is frequently asked questions that we pulled from the Quora stuff, and you can see the number of searches. The interesting thing about Quora is that people on Quora are actually trying to write should ask questions. And we're actually trying to see if those should ask questions have any value based on a market. So we have to be a little bit careful with that. We're also looking to see if they are frequently asked questions. But now we're going to get into the process of talking about what we mean at Network Empire, about what we mean by should ask questions. And I'm getting this from the Mike Koenig school of thought. I'm going to talk right to that. I don't want you to get confused around, because sometimes a frequently asked question is also a should ask question. And you can just hoard it right over. That's fine. If you can't come up with anything better and a question has 1,000 views, that's fine, 50 views or whatever. Just use that. And another reason that people have a difficult time with the transition from a frequently asked question to a should ask question is they're an affiliate marketer. Affiliate marketers don't care about understanding why their product was created, why it's better than other products, is it a vitamin or a painkiller, and what's the innovation behind it that makes it distinct and unique from everyone else. Affiliate marketers like to slap websites up, stick them out there, and drive traffic to it because they want to be traffic brokers. As a result, it's a real pain in the arse to try to figure out these questions are being asked. Their tendency is to just take all these questions, use them as headlines, and forget the should ask question. In fact, should ask questions are only useful if you're trying to position a company as the only viable option in the market. If you don't care about that, you don't have the money to do that, then don't bother with the should ask questions. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. If you're not doing branding and positioning and you don't want to create distinction as the only viable option in the market, then don't try to come up with better questions. Scientifically engineered brands always have a better question when they position themselves in a question because they're in competition with themselves. That's what we discussed earlier. The innovator's dilemma is to always be in competition with your own self internally and being aware of the market story, translating that market story into the best questions before the market even asks, because you're competing with yourself. Very few brands meet that standard, and that's why we have people, as you were saying, not fully understanding what that is, because they're generally affiliate markets and they're like, what? I'm not going to come up with a better question for this affiliate product I'm just slapping up there. But they're not product inventors. What we're asking you to do here is look at Quora as frequently asked questions, as well as your client sheet, which you brought with us. We have not done that today. Your homework tonight is going to be to put that on a spreadsheet and hear what your friends over at the renewable energy company you're working for believes are their common most questions internally, esoteric questions that they're given internally. In the meantime, I'm going to go through the process of thinking that takes you from a frequently asked question to a should ask question. Generally speaking, this is only best for somebody who is either the CEO, because CEOs are the drivers and the innovators behind the products and services. Nobody understands, for example, ThemeZoom the way that I understand ThemeZoom, because I created it with Sue. There's usually only a couple people. Same with Domain Web Studio. Matt wrote Domain Web Studio with Sue. He understands it better than I do. He's the driver for the innovation. As he said today at lunch, he breaks it regularly. So when somebody asks Matt's questions, you'll often hear him, he doesn't come out and say, well, that's not the right question. You should ask, because that could come off as a little bit rude. But the reality is, every time you're helping a student or correcting them or dealing with questions, in a way, you're saying, okay, here's the answer to your question. Great question, that's fine. And here's potentially a better way to look at it. Okay? So, if you have a large client, and you're not an expert on your client's products, I suggest if you want to go through this repositioning, this branding repositioning process, I suggest that you learn your company's products. Remember the hammer and the pneumatic hammer gun? That was an epic fail by that company. You need to understand what the innovations in this company are, what makes them distinct. Are they a painkiller or a vitamin? How are they different? A lot of the times the creation of a product itself comes from asking the right questions. And usually those right questions are better. And that's why they're such a cool product, right? It's like, I'm trying to give examples of really bad products. The pneumatic hammer was one of them. The question they asked might have been good. People don't like, well, we surveyed 50 million people, and a lot of them felt that raising a hammer was way too much work, and they hurt themselves when they hit their thumb with it. So somewhere along the line, a guy said, well, wow, okay, those must be the ultimate questions. Let's build a gun. That's, but you also have to get the design and all that together. So let's start looking at some of these questions and decide whether or not we're pulling headlines. It's fine as a frequently asked question based on views, or whether or not our expert on the products and innovations, remember it's ISDN, innovation solution, could turn it into a better question. All right, let's go ahead and try that, shall we? What's the future of energy storage and how does it impact renewable energies? You can see why you might need to be an expert on the specific detailed functions of products and services that you're selling in order to make that into a better question.
Sure.
Okay, now, the problem with this is you, Brian, may not be able to do this. And this is why many of our people who successfully do this walk away as an expert in the product and know the product sometimes better than the company directors themselves.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing I want to point out. Affiliates listening to this, don't be one of the affiliates who walks away from this program because you can't figure this out. If you're in the affiliate market, be really careful with this stuff because you're trying to position your brand. It's costly to go through this, and you don't really need to do it if you're just selling I'm trying to think of an affiliate product, an ebook on dating. Although, even when I choose ebooks on dating, I always find authors and books that have asked a better question about dating. I do it with everything. I look for the best products. And that's really product curation. Going through the products and finding the best ones and discovering why they're distinct because they asked a better product and a better engineering. Superior engineering. What's the future of energy storage and how does this impact renewables? Not a terrible question, right? Good in the search engine, great for extracting keywords, right, Sue? Mm-hmm. But let's try to take it to the next level. If one of your company directors of this company was sitting with us right now, and he was the Dr. Spock, the science engineer of renewable compressed industries, obviously I would have to know what technologies does CLEV create, why their capacitor cells are better than other cells, why the solar container units and silicon-derived alternative energy. You told me about this at lunch. Mm-hmm. Why their silicon, the planet's running out of silicon. You shared all this with me at lunch. And there's other processes called a plastic injection, blah, 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 new types of minerals being manufactured that are better than silicon.
Yes.
This is all FAQ, this is all should ask question knowledge that no one's asking yet.
Yes.
Because you're asking it before they're even bothering. Yes. Because they can't, they don't even know the right questions to ask. So, what you would have to do is the future of energy storage. For example, a scientist might say, the future of energy storage and how does it impact renewables? That's a great question. And a better question might be energy generation. Like, I don't know, I can't answer this until we have somebody, I'd have to read through, you're gonna have to either have somebody go through it with you in your company, but you might ask, you wanna lead that person down, you would wanna hear the science officer, the future of energy storage, how does it impact renewables, and what does renewables mean? I don't know this industry, so.
Well, it's obviously, on the energy storage component of, obviously, how their business model works is instead of understanding the technology, they buy out companies that have the existing knowledge and the existing expertise on that particular vertical, whether it's geothermal, whether it's a specific battery technology. And what's really important for how that impacts the future of renewables is how they're constantly being technically innovative with the product lines that they're researching on their R&D side.
Excellent. And
that they're bringing back.
So a quick example, and a very superficial example, just to give everybody in the audience an example of how complicated this can get with big companies. A better question might be how to get all the renewable technology builders in one room to share ideas to come up with the ultimate capacitor.
Sure.
That's a better question. Way better. Oh, by the way, we buy companies. Over here!
Sure.
Next question. Will renewable energy be developed fast enough to offset diminishing oil production? Okay, coming up with a better question for this is very interesting. It may not need one. You may not have needed one on the other one, okay? But if your engineer, somebody who's built Cleve, was sitting here, or the CEO was sitting here, he might just answer it directly and say, all right, that begs another question. Will renewable energy develop fast enough to offset diminishing oil production? A should-ask question might be redefining fast enough.
Or a hot topic right now might be, will renewable energy be developed fast enough to offset nuclear energy facilities being shut down?
Okay, and that's okay, and that's a different thread of the same question.
Sure.
And that's entirely fine to do. The challenge I have with your company is, until you know the company story, the company values, its agenda,
yes,
how it's moving towards a liquidity event, and what its products are. I don't fully understand. I've looked at your company, but because I don't understand the products necessarily for sale, what the agenda is, it's going to be hard for me to position those as frequently asked questions. You're going to be better at it than me. So there you go.
Is there a why behind Cleve?
That's a really good question.
You need to have that before you go.
I think they're into the how and what aspect of it, but I think if they're asking that core question to their own business profile of why they exist, obviously I think they're putting the profit aspect before the horse in that sense, but I can't answer that question. I think they can better answer it.
Well, one thing I feel like you would do, which I don't want you to overlook it, and I'm not being all fuzzy and warm and fluffy here. The reason we showed the Simon Sinek start with why functionality was to create the ultimate distinction in branding.
Yeah.
Simon is excellent at it. If you ever read his work deeper, I've read his book. And even if that CEO is positioned, even if right now they're confusing why with how and what, you can derive, usually when you look deep enough, you can find that there really is a why. But ultimately you want to look at what drives our company values, and you got to really understand their products. Okay.
Well, I can tell you certainly that they believe in the products that they've acquired and how they're implementing it. And I think they're really excited to work with the farming community on the geothermal component of it. And I think they have a lot of raving fans that have installed these geothermal facilities in their large farming, commercial farming applications, and they can't stop talking about it. So obviously, I think that brings him a lot of joy in the sense that he knows that he's contributing to that renewable energy.
Yeah,
to the
sustainability aspect.
And that's going to be brought out as a brand. But when we get to the geothermal FAQs pulled out from Quora, you're going to want to redirect them towards the same topics that they're raving fans. So you're trying to create a balance in should-ask question, which is redirecting them to the things that will actually make you profits without making it obvious that you're redirecting them. On the other hand, you're also trying to expose your innovation and your superior knowledge.
Yeah.
So there's two extremes in the FAQ. One is to redirect them towards a product or service that was created because it answers the question in a better way, if you have it. The problem is when a company doesn't have anything unique, they don't have anything innovative, then you really have to be careful with the frequently asked questions.
I think the only thing that really makes them stand apart amongst their competitors is that they're an A to Z process. I mean, they have everything in-house, from drilling out the wells for your geothermal to have installers that'll actually do it. They're not outsourcing any of that process. So having all of that unique knowledge and information under one house is their unique selling proposition.
And what is that process called that they've got all in-house?
I don't know if they have really pigeonholed it into a name. It's more of the.
Even if they have to coin it.
Yeah.
This is why, wonder why we have so many neologisms? Because you're always creating a system, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
And they've actually got one, they just haven't named it.
Well, that's all that businesses think about is
Of
how to
course.
improve their systems
But
and
if
how to
they-
improve their
It
ROIs.
surprises me how many people fail to recognize that that is the core product.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not your solar panels. I mean, I'm thrilled that you guys have these awesome giant solar panels, but the thing is, the distinction is the process A to Z, because then you have about 100 different questions that are better questions than anything else asked you.
Yeah.
And you can always bring it back to that proprietary system. A better question might be, why is it better to have an entire renewable energy system installation process from A to Z available? You can answer that. That's a better question than like a half of the questions that you've answered.
And you could interview Kelly, and he will tell you why having different contractors for that
It's a
A to Z
nightmare.
process is an absolute total
Truly.
expensive nightmare.
Yeah.
Truly, and that's a fantastic question. Why is there, a better question might be, why is it hellish to hire multiple independent contractors to create a renewable energy home? And I can tell you, we already know that that's a real pain. That's a painkiller question. So the challenge I've had teaching students this is that sometimes a frequently asked question can be turned around and turned into a should ask question. And sometimes a should ask question can be turned around and put into a frequently asked question. The point is, it just depends which way you're going when you're educating the market. That's part of the gray area, or the contrarian approach to generating buzz. Okay, let's try another one.
Okay. Most cost-effective energy renewable strategy for green buildings.
Okay, you can leave that as it is. You don't have to do a should ask question, but probably your expert, if you were sitting here, would be able to rephrase that a little bit better. Okay. One of the most cost-effective. Now, what I like to do with questions like this is I only like to do one question at a time. This is more than one question in some ways. If they're saying energy efficient, renewable, I guess that's the same.
So you could segment that obviously into two questions
Yeah.
with the same.
That's right. And then, if that question lines up with your values, you would go to a should ask question. What are the most cost-effective, energy efficient, renewable energy? A better question that I'm trying to change this to a question that would lead them closer to your products and services. That's key. Without making it sound like I'm not answering the question. You don't want to sidestep the question. So first you answer it, and then you might say something like, why are Cleve's blah 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 how does Cleve's blah 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 process guarantee save you money by guaranteeing the most energy efficient battery within your home blah 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 system? What you've done is you've just specified a should ask question and made it very specific to your company innovation. Mm-hmm. If you don't have that, you're in trouble. Keep the frequently asked question.
Or you could say that question is actually too generic, and the most cost-effective renewable energy strategy depends on your location.
Yes.
Because it's not the same in Arizona as it would be in Canada. And in Canada, it would be because, which we sell.
Obviously, it's temperature and climate that affect those are the intangibles that affect how those install. And obviously, here, 80% of renewable energy is probably solar, and the 20% is geothermal. In Canada, that might be a total reverse, where it could be 80% geothermal and 20% solar.
But I want to point out to us, very carefully, and to the people watching, that what we just did, the tendency is to slide over and get caught in the process. What you just did is you just gave a better question, or a should ask question, by redirecting it to local climate.
Localizing it, yes.
So are you guys following how powerful? What that is that you just created a gray area by nullifying this question, but you also answered it, so I'm not offended.
Okay.
You see, this is the tricky part. Is like, oh, you're such the mistakes that I made in trying to teach students that somehow some of them were under the impression that I'm saying, call everyone an idiot, don't answer their question, tell them their question is stupid, and reconstruct a better one. What I'm saying is answer their question, use the keywords, and a lot of the times by answering their question, you've created a better one by default.
Right.
Because if it's not, and if you don't have an innovation or a product that is by default helping you create better, higher level thinking and better products, and you probably don't have that great of a product to begin with. You're probably in an industry like reselling or something like that, like on eBay. If you're an eBay reseller or stuff, it's hard to do this stuff when you're doing that, when you're in commodities.
Right.
So anybody out there who's using our systems, affiliates, the rest, you can still use our systems, but you're not going to find it very useful to do a bunch of should ask questions if you're in constantly, you're going to have to reposition your brand a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Such as guarantee, or 100% return rate, or 30-day money back guarantee. Okay. But when you're building big brands, innovation is key. So thank you, Brian. See, you guys just provided a fantastic redirect. You answered the question by explaining that you got to think about geolocation. And by the way, that's a significant portion of the process that Clev uses. Oh, over here! Bingo. Next. And I don't even know what I'm doing. I don't even understand the product, so I'm able to do this. What's it like to work in renewable energy development on a day-to-day level? That's actually a fantastic question by itself.
Sure.
A better question might be more specific, or at least a different question, or more a more company-centric question. Doesn't mean that this question is bad. Might be, I don't know. You could redirect this in so many different ways. Does Clev have a day? Why does Clev have a day-to-day direct knowledge hands-on? Because they're doing this stuff all the time, and they know what it looks like, right?
I could rephrase that in. I would say. In a different way, in the sense I could say it's something like as a pain point, you know, it's spring right now, I want to get that solar panel on my roof as soon as possible. How long are your contractors going to be at my house, and what's the process? How long is that day-to-day process going to take, and how is it going to be a messy process? You know, I would try to dial into the actual work. Like, so how long are they going to be here for? How long is it going to take them to do the work? Is it going to be messy work? And what's the timeline?
Exactly, that's fantastic. What you're doing is you're making it company-centric, and you're the pain somewhere in here. It's hard to say why this person put this on core, but you don't really care because it's still speaking to it. One of the pains may be, and we can cross-reference this question with your client's questions, like other people that I know who've tried to go into renewable energy, their home was left a mess and it took so long and there was scope creep, whatever. Why is Clev different?
Yeah. Okay. Or it's something that we talked about earlier. Do I have to replace my entire roof to support a solar panel?
So we've just come up with 4.
How long is it going to take?
We've come up with 4 should I ask questions just by bouncing stuff back and forth, and I'm not even an expert.
Yeah.
If your key positioning point is the fact that Cleve is an A to Z company, then what I would do with this question is say, working for a renewable energy contractor that deals with just one segment of the installation process can be an absolute nightmare, because coordination slips and the process and and they often get sued because of blah blah blah, whereas working with an A to Z company, it's smooth and sweet,
and it's not clean up process after.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that you've done a couple of different things, and again, frequently asked question to should ask question can be a little misleading. What we're really trying to do is take questions and dig and find what the pains beneath those questions are. If they're not, and this might be just some college student asking like, hey, I want to get into renewable energy, what's it like? That's okay too. But the point is, it helps you zoom the exercise of stretching into company-centric solutions and innovations, if you have them, allows you to use the keywords in the frequently asked questions, but moves it into a company positioning question. And that's what you want. And what happens when you go through all of these with a client, or a good section of the top 10, is when you're done and you understand the position uniquely, you come up with awesome transitions from stuff that's commonly asked into, oh yeah, here's our innovation, here's our innovation. I think what you would find, I'm not really thrilled about the fact that you told me they don't even have a name, even so there's the fact that they have cultivated via millions of dollars a unique process of cultivating and installing a full energy system or a renewable system in their environment.
Yeah, I think that's I think you put the right pin on it, is that it's, I think it's important for them to show the process of what they're going to be tell the story of how they're going to be taking a customer through this process.
Of course.
In whatever product that they're installing.
And the number one...
And then give it a brand.
Right.
You know, that process.
And the number one reason that I created the ISDNA process, from frequently asked to should ask, is the tangibilization process. Is that companies are continually started where scientists who are terrible marketers are installed, and they sell the gizmo, not the results. And they tangibilize the wrong things. Rather than tangibilizing
Well, did you see that on the website when you reviewed it? Did you see that kind of story being told anywhere? It was very brand specific when you guys reviewed the site?
I looked at the site, but there was no proprietary unique processes that were tangible.
It's just like a run-of-the-mill website.
Right.
Yeah.
When you look at it, it just seems like the company's built the website in-house.
Yeah.
They put a bit about us, this is what we're interested in, this is what we do. But it didn't give the whole story of...
And I think if we could, that's what the questions are helping us with, is to build up a framework of a story to help walk that potential client through the process.
Yeah,
and then aligning that process with the correct story.
Who is Cleave? Why must we use Cleave? What is great about what Cleave does? What is the best solution for me? How will Cleave help me make this decision? These are types of things that will help a person actually buy into what they're doing.
And ultimately, that gets into what is Cleave's actual product and how is it distinct from the marketplace.
So, question at this junction.
Yeah.
I don't know how big Cleave is. I don't know how difficult it is to talk to the people there. But how would you feel about hopping on the phone? They're a couple hours ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
So you could hop on the phone with them first thing in the morning, have a conversation about that, about the why and their what their perspective is and their differentiations from their competitors. And then we can come back and re-examine what it is we talked about today and maybe crystallize that a little bit more.
Sure. I know that they're ahead of us for hours right now. I'm just trying
I think it's 3 hours. We're West Coast time. For California time?
Yeah, they're ahead of us 3 hours.
Yeah, so by the time it's 9 o'clock here, it's noon there.
Yeah. So obviously, if I call them in the early morning, what I'll have to do is I'll have to go through Travis. I'll get him to give me connection with Nancy.
Okay.
She is a little hard to pin down.
Okay.
She's really the principal person. It's her husband and her that run the company.
Okay.
I think he's even more harder to pin down.
Okay.
But I think I can get 15 to 20 minutes with her, and to try to extrapolate that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. I'll try and see if I can get her on Skype so that I can record it.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Cool.
Yeah, and the takeaway here is that what are you selling? And why are you selling it? And is it an innovation?
I think the why part of why you're selling things is kind of the critical missing key in I think they know what they're selling. I think they know how they're selling it. I still think that they haven't keyed in on the why part.
Yeah.
That I can see that I'm picking up.
And there are some that just they don't have a why, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's entirely fine if you don't start with why.
Yeah.
But then if you don't start with why, you must have an innovative what,
Yeah.
or otherwise you will fail.
Right.
If you have no why and no innovative what, walk away.
Yeah. It's just like
This is
everybody
key.
else.
Like, I can say this 100 times. I know there are going to be thousands of people watching through it, and they still won't do this. If you may have no why, which is horrible. I would never want to be in business without a why. Me personally, I can't survive without inspiration.
And I might be completely naive on this.
Sure.
She can set me straight pretty quickly on that.
But what is distinction? And they may have clear distinction and clear innovation that inspires them somewhere that's just not on their website.
Mm-hmm.
But if it does exist, it's not on their website. And you've already described what it is, at least one of the many things it could be,
Sure.
which is a process that integrates all the aspects of a renewable product.
From start to finish.
Yeah.
Well, I think right now that they're explaining that process, but they're explaining it offline right now, and they're explaining it in webinars to a specific target group
Of course.
right now,
Right.
which is working for them. And
Sure.
and because it's working for them, they didn't really realize that they could take that and put that online
And that's your job.
and build their business 10 times full.
And that's
Right?
why you're here. And that's why I'm emphasizing.
Yeah.
In fact, this may be the primary takeaway of your trip here.